All right. All right. Ready to roll.
So I thought.
Maybe.
Very good.
All right. Welcome to the St. Mary's County Metropolitan Commission regular meeting, Thursday, April 24th, 2025 at 3 p.m. First off, with approval of the agenda. Everybody have a chance to look at it. Need a motion?
Motion to approve the agenda as written.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, go down to approval of the last meeting on March 27th. Any questions? If not, need a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes from last meeting,
Second.
I'm sorry, could you state the date?
March 27th, 2025.
We got a motion, need a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passed. We'll move on to the consent agenda. First one is the fiscal standard report. Any questions on that? I guess we move down to the engineering standard report. Operations standard report. Legal services invoices. Any questions? All right, let's move on to new business. County tax sale update.
I'm sorry, sir, could we get a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Oh, I'm sorry. Need a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented
All right.
for March 2025.
All right, got a motion. Need a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, let's move on to new business. County tax sale update. Patty?
Good afternoon.
Hello, hello.
Commissioners, this is an informational item to update you on the final 2025 tax sale results. Metcom has first lien on the property through Chapter 113, so we work very closely with the county treasurer each year as their office holds the annual property tax sale. The process started back in October, and any account that was in arrears by 6 months or more received notice that that property was eligible for tax sale. The property owners are continuously notified throughout the entire process. They're given an opportunity to request a deferral. The board did approve 2 deferral requests this year. The owner still has until the day before the actual tax sale, which is the first Friday in March, to become current. But once January 1st hits, they get an added prorated amount added to their amount due so that they're paid up through June. That way they will not fall into arrears the next year and be eligible again. This year we started with 77 properties in October, and in the end we had 10 that actually went to tax sale. They were all residential, no commercial properties. This is the same number we had last year. On the graph that I provided in your memo, you can see back a few years, there was a spike, a blue spike. That was the result of just after the pandemic. And during the pandemic, if you remember, the governor's executive order was we could not disrupt any service, no matter their delinquency. So when the governor rescinded that order, that spike went up because we had many properties that were delinquent. But in the end, when it came time for tax sale, most of those actually became current. But that's what that blue spike is. So in the end this year, we did have, with those 10 properties, the balance due was just over $27,600. And those 10 properties brought bids of over $1.4 million. So we get our $27,000. And those property owners still have, I think they have almost a year to go back and reclaim their property. So if you have any questions, otherwise there's no action required.
No questions, we'll move on to.
I just kind of a quick question, sorry about that, is, so like, in comparison to last year, there's roughly about the same amount.
Mhm.
How many of those then, within that next window, did the owners actually come back and redeem their property?
I don't know how many, but a lot do.
Okay.
Yes, quite often, most of them do.
And is there any avenue that we have that now they're also going to be in arrears again in 6 months if they do that way?
They could be. I
Okay.
mean, if they were in the prior year, not this tax sale, but
No, well, again, I'm just using last year's because there's the window that
right.
they can't really
Right.
close the
So
the property until, there's some other things going on or whatever. And I was just curious whether then of, let's say, the 10, 5 of them
they
eventually
have,
get 'em
it
back.
has been every other year. They'll
Okay.
get it back. They'll end up in tax sale again.
Okay.
Yeah, it does happen.
Okay.
And in fact, the two people that we authorized the deferral, those two properties, neither one has come current yet. And part of our deferral is that we will not give them another deferral. So it'll just make their delinquency even larger next year.
It's a way of getting a cheap, low-interest loan. I pay your bill.
So if they don't pay their bill and it goes to tax sale and someone buys it, the original owner has a year to rebuy it back.
Yes. To
Within-
pay
So
it.
it just sits in limbo for a
It
year
does,
then.
It does.
Wow. Okay.
But at the time of purchase, we're made whole, right?
We are, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
So at the
whoever,
time-
We don't have
whoever
to wait
bid
the
on
year,
it is
okay.
the one, the person that bid on it is the
Takes
one
that
that's
long.
paying
Has
that
Pay
past
all
due
the
tax.
back liens and
Yes.
everything.
Yes,
But then
They
they did all that and 364 days later, oh,
Yeah.
by the way, I want my house back.
Yep.
And they paid all of the,
But they get their money back and whatever the charges are by the county.
yes.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Okay.
it's like a little investment.
It's not free.
Yeah.
oh, nothing's free.
It's a little investment.
A lot of red tape.
Can't even get free advice anymore.
How long do they have to be delinquent before we put them on tax sale?
As of October 1st, we look back 6 months.
6 months.
So if they're more than 6 months, then they are eligible.
So pay your bill, Roy.
Got 1 month to go.
You got 5 more months.
That's 5 months.
You got 5 months, man, free.
If there's no more questions, we'll move on to the second item, the Mako OPED.
Okay. Again, this is an informational item on the OPEB status at the end of the fourth quarter, so December 31st of '24. Again, OPEB is other post-employment benefits. It's a fiduciary fund. It allows Metcom to fund and offer healthcare benefits to our retirees. We have cash in a Maryland local government investment pool. It's basically similar to a savings account. It's currently earning 4.4% interest rate. The majority of our fund is in the Mako, Maryland Association of Counties Pooled Trust. The trust as a whole has over $94 million at the end of December. And Metcom's participation, which is the largest of the group of 16 in the trust, we had a balance of just over 9.4 million at the end of the year. We did see a decrease from the prior quarter. And I guess, as we all know, the market's pretty volatile right now. I did check our balance at the March 31st statement, and it's back up by another $100,000. So it's wishy-washy.
Yeah, exactly.
And the allocation over the fourth quarter was 62.6% in equities, which are mutual funds and stocks, and 37.3% in bonds, which are the safest. And then we had 1% in cash, and that was the trust as a whole. And if you have no questions, I'll be back in May to request our second budgeted contribution for this fiscal year to the trust.
Any questions?
No.
If not, we'll move on to third item. Second amendment to the
Give-
memorandum with the Board of
Excuse me.
Education, Chapticon. Ed?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I have two items up for your consideration this afternoon. The first of which is the Second Amendment to the Memorandum of Agreement with the Board of Education. In 2009, the Commission entered into an agreement with the St. Mary's County Board of Education to operate the wastewater treatment facility located at Chopticon High School. The facility serves Chopticon High School and Margaret Brent Middle School. The estimated population served is approximately 1,900 students and staff when school is in session. The original agreement and First Amendment provides that the Commission will operate and maintain the facility and be reimbursed for any related costs. Recently, the discharge permit for the facility was renewed by the Maryland Department of the Environment in the Board of Education's name. So what we do is we operate the facility. We basically fill out all the paperwork, hand that over to the Board of Education, and they actually submit the discharge monitoring reports to the Maryland Department of the Environment. So therefore, staff is requesting today for the Commission approval for the Executive Director to sign the Second Amendment to the Memorandum of Agreement with the St. Mary's County Board of Education for the Chopticon High School Treatment Facility. There is no changes in the language to the agreement. The original agreement was signed in 2009. We've talked with the Board of Education. We think it's time just to update the signatories that are on the agreement. We feel as though the language in the agreement is broad enough that it kind of covers all the costs that we would incur. So that's where we are today. With that, I will take any questions.
Do we have these with all the schools that we serve?
No, we do not. A lot of those schools don't have the treatment facilities. Some of the schools actually have septic systems. The schools do have their own private water systems, which they operate.
Oh,
This is the only treatment facility that they operate. And like I said, that treats Chopticon High School.
just the two
and
schools.
Just the two schools.
Oh, we got a lot of different types of things at different.
Yeah.
All right, okay.
So my understanding is they reimburse us for everything we do in there, correct?
They reimburse us for actual time, materials, mileage, administrative overhead, any equipment that needs to be purchased. So they reimburse us for everything.
And I'm assuming that you give them some sort of estimated proposal for the year? Or
In
not
the memorandum of agreement, there is an estimated proposal as far as what sort of maintenance is required, what sort of operational requirements the facility has. With the new permit, some of it's a little stricter as far as the discharge limits. So there will be some additional sampling, but there's going to be no additional operational requirements there. So all that's really spelled out in the agreement for reimbursement.
And with your concurrence to push SCADA into our northern facilities,
Right.
SCADA is another piece of the pie that we'll get reimbursed for.
Okay, and they're, I'm assuming, aware that that's coming?
They know it's coming, they know the cost, and
Right.
they agree to. Yes, sir.
So it said we pump from Margaret Brent down to Chopticon?
We don't. The school actually has a pump station at Margaret Brent that they are responsible for. But yes, the force main comes from Margaret Brent, goes all the way down to Chopticon High School.
Oh, wow.
Which they would like us to take over.
I bet.
Yeah, one of the things that they want us to do is, at one point in time over the last 2 years, I think that force main did break. I think it went unnoticed for about a day or two or three. So they want us to walk that force main, I think like once or twice a year. Which again, I think the language in the agreement is broad enough that it does cover those sorts of contingencies.
So that's a totally separate pipe. I had no idea. Stuff we learned.
Any questions? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. Move that the commission grant the executive director the authority to sign all documents related to the memorandum of agreement with the St. Mary's County Board of Education for the operation and maintenance of the Chopticon High School treatment facility.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor? Any more discussion? If not, need everybody say aye.
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 Motion to accept.
All right, that's the second motion for the same thing.
No, there should be the next item up, which is the right-of-way clearing, maintenance, and pesticide application contract award. So Metcom has an ongoing project to clear and recover water and sewer rights of ways. The purpose of this project is to gain access to areas where water distribution lines, sewer gravity lines, and force mains are in off-road areas or heavily vegetated locations. Generally, we maintain a 20-foot wide right-of-way for underground water and sewer mains and service lines. Clearing and maintaining rights of ways and easements are crucial for access, alleviating possible route intrusion, and for proper inspection of maintenance of service lines. Areas are designated for clearing vary according to maintenance and operational demands. The current bid is based on about approximately 4,600 linear feet of initial recovery and approximately 6,300 linear feet of maintenance, clearing, and right-of-ways. Therefore, staff is requesting board approval of contract number 25-12-F to procure right-of-way clearing, maintenance, and pesticide application services from the responsive and responsible bidder, Lorenz Incorporated of Baltimore, Maryland, for pricing submitted in their bid dated March 14th, 2025. And with that, I will take any questions.
Did they have the previous bid?
No. Previous bidder was Honey Cove Landscaping out of Calvert County. These guys came in lower this year.
Yeah, Honey Grove got a little greedy there. We take low man.
R&R Escapes is real greedy.
And just to clarify, the pesticide application services is for herbicide. The state of Maryland classifies all herbicides as a general type of pesticide. So it's the contract is not for
Mosquitoes.
it is for herbicide application.
More poison ivy than mosquitoes. Yeah. Now, these are areas that are basically cleared already, and these are being maintained, or is this any of them have to go in with?
It's about 4,600 feet that what's considered to be the initial clearing. Some of these right-of-ways have never been cleared before, so they'll go in there, they'll cut the trees down, they'll roll the trees off to the side of the right-of-ways. They'll chip and mulch everything under, I think, 6-inch diameter. And then what happens is about 2 or 3 years later, when the undergrowth starts to come back, we'll have to go back through and re-clear everything. And that's really where the application of the pesticide or herbicide comes in to kind of knock that regrowth down.
Okay, so this is the clearing and getting it that way.
It's the clearing and maintaining, so it's both.
Oh, it could
So
go on. Okay. Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay.
Need a motion.
I'll make a motion to move that the commission accept and award the right-of-way recovery, clearing, maintenance, and pesticide application contract 25-12-F to Lorenz Incorporated of Baltimore, Maryland, at the unit prices submitted in their bid dated March 14th, 2025. Further move that staff be authorized and directed to sign all the documentation relating to this contract award, including but not limited to the contract renewals, and all approved amendments.
Got a motion, need a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, commissioners.
No poison ivy for me.
Number 5, 25 legislative proposal hearing, testimony, letters of appreciation to the Southern Maryland delegation for support of House Bill 491, amendments to Chapter 113 of the St. Mary's County Code. George Erickson and Chris Beaver presenting.
Good afternoon. What we have before you is a series of thank you letters to give you an update on our legislation that was proposed this year. It ultimately ended up being designated as House Bill number 491. Our sponsor was Delegate Todd Morgan. We gave the House and the Senate a combination of in-person, virtual, and written testimony. It went through the House unopposed. It went through the Senate unopposed, went to the county commissioners, received their endorsement, and an endorsement letter was sent to both the House and the Senate side. It was returned back for the governor's signature. It is pending governor's signature at this point in time. Once he does sign the House bill, it will go into effect October 1st of 2025. And just as a real quick recap, the changes weren't necessarily drastic. One of the main changes was to allow us to turn off water for reasons other than just lack of payment. For example, there are cases, we had one case in particular where, I don't know if you recall, we had somebody take all the copper pipe out from underneath the rental property and the water was still turned on. They had come in here for a water bill adjustment. We had no ability to turn off the water to help them lower their bill. There are cases that are natural disasters, for example. It could be a hurricane or tornado. We want the ability to be able to turn off the water should that happen. Just gives us a little bit more flexibility. The other primary change was our ability to assess charges in excess of $1,000 when third parties damage our utilities, basically for time and materials. We already had a provision in there to assess time and materials for costs less than $1,000. But the law only allows us to assess $1,000. And I think we told you one time Comcast hit one of our utilities and we spent $13,000 on the repair. Had they known about this provision in the law, they may not have agreed to pay that $13,000, although it was clearly their fault. We just don't believe that should be a burden to the customer. And with that testimony, the House and the Senate agreed that that was reasonable. That's basically it. As we do every year, when it's successful, and we have not yet been unsuccessful at any legislation we propose, but I think even if we were unsuccessful, we would still thank them for support if they did support it. But in this particular case, our legislation is going forward. And that's it. It's a long process for a little bit of additional authority. But it's worth it.
Any more questions? If not, need a motion?
I'll make this motion. Move that the commission authorize the chairman to sign letters of appreciation to the commissioners of St. Mary County and the Southern Maryland delegation for their support of the legislative text amendments, HB 491, to Chapter 113 of the St. Mary's County Code.
Got a motion, need a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now we get down to the good stuff, right?
It was a relatively easy budget process this year, at least publicly it was. We did a lot of scrambling on our side. But as you're aware, we had our public hearing on the 15th of April this year. We presented our capital budget to the county commissioners this past Tuesday. We were able to answer all their questions. They seemed pleased with our debt. We don't just provide them with a summary of our capital project and the changes since the prior year. We give them some insight on our operating budget impact to customers, which will end up being their constituents as well. We also give them a pretty good overview of our debt and where we stand in terms of debt capacity, and we go over our performance measures to let them know how we're doing. As you all are aware, they select you to serve on this board. You're sort of their eyes and ears, so it's nice when we're able to go over there and they hear the same thing from us that they do hear from you. The hearing was publicized in the newspaper. We reminded our customers with a note in their bills. We posted the notice on Facebook. We had a specific call-in line for those that may not have been able to attend, so they could call into the meeting if they wanted to provide any comment. And comments are also, whether they be email or otherwise forwarded to us in writing. We're open for public comment until tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. And to date, we have not received any comments. This was one of the first hearings. I think the least amount of people that have ever attended is one. We had nobody in attendance. We'll credit the board, obviously, when your rates are only going up 2%, in the neighborhood of 2%, you're doing a good job. When you bring in a capital budget or an operating budget that's only 1.5% higher than last year's approved, I think the board did a good job there too. So I don't think there's a lot to complain about. And that's usually the people that come out. They're not necessarily those that are supportive of what we're doing. So that was a good sign overall.
And commissioners, today, we have 3 items left on our budget process. We'll further discuss COLA and merits, as they are already programmed in the budget and they were in the presentation in the public hearing. Likewise, the employee benefit suggestions, which included an increase in the cell phone stipend, a health insurance stipend, and then an increase in the comp time accrual hours from 80 to 120 for our exempt employees. However, we did agree to return with market adjustment recommendations once they became available.
This slide is just a follow-up to what you've seen probably 2 or 3 times. As you recall from our last meeting, we stated 2 things. Number one, if the market adjustment reserve and the employee benefit suggestions did not go forward, we would simply roll those 2 numbers down into the emergency reserve. And likewise, if during the year we will approve a market adjustment reserve, or we need any additional money from the reserve, whether it be as a result of tariffs or increased costs that we couldn't fund out of the main budget that you allocate, we could bring funding from the reserve back into the main part of the budget.
And in total, great job by everybody bringing in a budget at 20 million, 5.5 million, and only 1.5% above the FY25 budget. And you may recall from prior presentations, this comparison, and from FY20 to 25, the sum total of COLAs, merits, and market adjustments, the county is 5.8% more than Metcom. And also for a longer period of time, from 2007 to 2025, the county is 11.3% higher than Metcom. But the takeaway here is that information by itself is really only increases. It's not considering the classification of your positions. That's why it was important to us to go forward with the market salary study.
Yeah, we're asked about this every year, and this is what we present every year to every board. But the disparity that you see is not necessarily disparity because it's not reflective of actual salary. So we don't ever want numbers like that to drive decisions on COLAs or merits. It's just information only.
So we ran a few scenarios for you, for your information. Our first option, do what we did last year, a 2% COLA in July, and then a mid-year 2% COLA. The Social Security Administration has announced a 2.5% COLA in 2025, but also the same fiscal impact would be a 3% COLA on July 1st. And that's much easier to implement than 2%. But this was all prior to receiving any information on the market survey, without knowing what the recommendation would be or the fiscal impact of the market survey. So we would have suggested a 3% COLA on July 1st and the market impact mid-year, not knowing what that impact might be. You did have a budgeted $200,000 set aside for that impact. We also looked at a 4% COLA on July 1st, and a market impact might get pushed to the next fiscal year. And it's also important to note that the legislative updates, the sewage sludge utilization plan did not get passed in by the governor, and we had 355,000 in the board reserve for that. Plus the Time to Care Act, the governor has deferred that to 2027. We had, I believe, 34,800 budgeted for that.
And we just
So-
received the independent market survey, which you approved for us to go forward in January. There's no slide for that. I sent an email to you earlier this week. We thought it was important enough to share that with you. Whether there's approval or not to go forward with implementation at this time, or you want to wait till the next meeting. Either way, it's up to you, but when we come back next time, we'll have a proposed budget for you to actually approve. It's suggested in the market study that 7% is that market adjustment. The county's is or was determined to be 11%. They implemented theirs over a 3-year period. The reason we made the recommendations we made before about mid-year implementation and maybe deferring to the next year, we had no idea if it was going to come in at 10, 12, 13, 2%. As you recall, Commissioner Alvey suggested maybe a 4% at the beginning of the year. We commended him for his graciousness, but we really thought you should wait until you get the market study before deciding what to do. So what you have in your budget and what the recommendation is, I believe, from the independent consultant is if you look at the budget that we currently have, we have a 2% COLA programmed in the budget already, suggest that be implemented. We have the market adjustment, which we've already programmed in the budget. That's 200,000. That basically equates to about 2% of a COLA. And the balance of 3%, we could utilize the reserve, in particular, those 2 legislative updates that did not get approved that are in the reserves. That would still leave the commission with 2% of an emergency reserve, around 400,000, to take care of any unforeseen things that we see throughout the year. 2% is typically what we do. We have had a 1% reserve before. We used to not budget a reserve. We used to budget 0. The reserve has probably never been used, but it's a really smart thing to do. And we did it in response to the economy 2 or 3 years ago when it was just extremely difficult to predict what was going to happen. And ever since then, we thought a 1 to 2% reserve is just a really smart way to do business. And whether you agree or disagree, we have a motion prepared as part of this presentation. But we would like your general consensus with some direction. Patty's folks, the finance folks, have to put together a budget. They can put together 2, they can put together 1, they can put together any combination thereof. But the bottom line is we need to approve that by May.
Sorry, the next meeting.
I think it's May 20th. It'll be after the county commissioner joint meeting that you have with them. So with that, we are open to as many questions as you'd like to talk and propose to us.
First of all, as good as this board has done, I think the credit goes to you guys, the management team of Metcom, for keeping the rates as low as they are, the expenditures and stuff. I think all credit goes to everybody here. You guys get the credit. Now let's go on to the money issue. All right, it says here 3% COLA market impact mid-year and 4% on July 1st. Can that be rolled into a 7% July 1st and no mid-year or end of the year
Yes, so those,
without impacting the finances?
Those were suggestions
Those-
before the market study was
before we
in.
got the study.
Right.
So if you follow the recommendation of the market study that was forwarded to you, you would utilize the 2% COLA that's already approved, make that effective July 1st. The market study that's already incorporated into the budget effective July 1st. And the balance of the market adjustment, which is 3% from the reserve. So in effect, it would be 7%.
Mhm.
What we didn't want to do is put the commission in a position to play games. A COLA and a market adjustment both move the salary scale to the right. They both do. So whether it's a 1% and a 6%, a 3 and a 3, a 2% and then a 4% mid-year.
Right.
Whatever the numbers are, it moves it moves the salary scale to the right. So the concept here was, we've gone forward from the beginning with the 2% COLA, so just call it a 2% COLA.
Right.
We had a market adjustment of 200,000, utilize that for the intended purpose. That represents about a 2% number. Take the 3% balance from the reserve to get the total of 7.
Right.
But stick with the plan that we laid out. Don't start mixing and matching at this point, would be our recommendation.
Well, my only concern or want would be to everything all at one time, July 1st. I like to see the money get into the paychecks, keep up with what's going on as soon as possible. And that's my personal opinion, and if anybody else has questions.
And with that, if that were the plan, your reserve would then end up being 2%, just about $400,000.
Which is good, right?
Which is what we
Mhm.
typically budget.
Yes.
Your reserve was higher this year in terms of recommendation from staff because of those 2 legislative items. They both didn't pass.
Yeah,
So
as long as it's not impacting
Yeah,
anything.
what are the cons with doing the 7% all at once? Nothing.
The cons,
Yeah.
it's just going to reduce that reserve down. Yeah, that's all.
For example, if you proposed a mid-year market adjustment, we'd end up with a 2.3% reserve instead of 2% reserve. The other thing to remember, the board has been providing 2% mid-year COLAs over the past 3 years, and that is probably why the market adjustment only ended up being 7. And to answer your question, Commissioner Mattingly, it's not so much this year. You go into the next year baseline when you do a half-year implementation with it being a full-year impact. So you'll realize the full-year impact in the year it was intended. You won't defer the full-year impact to the following year. It's a strategy that a lot of people do to not necessarily hide in the baseline, but to get a full impact. So our employees received a 2% COLA in January, but it's really a lead-in COLA to this year, if that makes any sense. So the only disadvantage, again, would be the full impact's not realized till the next year. So you want to make sure it's affordable.
I like the idea of spreading it out, because if you give an employee something like a cost of living, wow, I got a raise, and then for the next long amount, gee, I wonder if I can get another raise, or gee, could I get a little something here? Seems to me that you have something every once in a while. It's like a little incentive. If it's all done at one time, it tends to be forgotten a month later. Does that make any sense or not? Not forgotten, I mean, thank you, but
It does, but
What if
I
you
guess what we
implement
would do is we would point out what the county has done on several occasions. They're implementing a 3.67% over 3 years. The market adjustment is a snapshot in time.
Right.
And anytime you defer or lag it or spread it out, you end up with what's called a lag. And that snapshot in time is pushed to the right, and it's no longer valid. It's no longer a snapshot in time. So understand what you're saying, but in 3 years, you'd be back to doing another market study because you wouldn't be in sync.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
This keeps us from doing another salary study for probably 4 or 5 years, at least 5 years.
Okay.
That's your statement's still, not trying to
No,
discourage
that's
you
fine.
saying what you said. It is, I don't disagree, but there's a downside as well.
Right, well, I'm just looking at it as an employee getting something every once in a while. Oh, I got another bonus, oh, I got another this or another that. If you give it all at once, people do tend to forget about it, but they're not looking at the whole picture and what we are doing here. So thank you for explaining that, though. I certainly don't want to be the instigator of a lag,
I can say.
whatever that means.
Well, a mid-year is the same thing. It's a 6 month. When you explained it, you sort of laid out 5 or 6 different intervals, and a mid-year is just one. It doesn't really add a significant number of intervals that I think would change that
It
mentality.
could be any amount of intervals, but I'm just saying,
I counted 5.
okay, well, all right, I must have pushed more than I thought. You would count 5, wouldn't you?
Okay.
And with that being said, I actually have a bunch of friends of mine that do work for Metcom, obviously Dwayne and a couple other ones that I go camping with. And when we did it last year, I actually caught a little feedback from them, not Dwayne, but some of the lower ranks about that. And they would have preferred it had just been a one time at the beginning instead of giving us a little now and then waiting 6 months to give us the more. They would have rather had it all in the one fell swoop.
Okay.
Seemed to be the general consensus.
And the mid-year really is affordability. That's typically how it's done. We've done on several cases, we've asked for FTEs and we've asked them to be mid-year. That's less about affordability than it is just practicality. By the time you get the position classified, you put it out, you schedule the interviews, they give their notice to their employers, you're looking at a half a year anyway. And you don't bring them in November and December because they'd be off. So that's a strategic, that's done strategically, but not for budgetary purposes, just from a practical standpoint.
Well, that's good, Joe, to actually get their opinion and prove me what the hell do I know.
Well, not attempting to do that.
I know, but I just put my foot right in there. I thought I knew what
on the other side.
I thought I knew what the employee knew. I didn't know anything.
That would work if you were working ahead, but when it causes a lag, then
Yep, no lags.
they would prefer to have it ahead.
Well, good. We just figured that out. Thank you.
Is there a motion that we need to make to
No
do
motion, we
that,
just were looking for a consensus to prepare the final documents of the budget.
You know, if the, we won't call it a proposal, if the concept of implementing the 2% COLA that's budgeted, utilizing the market adjustment that's budgeted, and coming up with the balance of that from the reserve, we can certainly put that together and package it that way.
Do you need an opinion from all of us to?
Just a general
Where to
consensus.
go?
Yeah, that's,
My opinion is that 7% July 1st.
Okay.
so whatever combination gets to that point.
So you all do have a motion included.
Yes.
Right, but it's,
Sorry, we do have a
it's-
motion.
That's not,
Oh.
yeah, that's not.
Well, yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
I know we
specific.
had that motion. I just didn't know, did we need to make a separate motion for just that? The COLA?
as long as you're in
7%?
agreement, the motion as written works,
Mhm.
because it's the compensation as discussed today.
So how does everybody feel?
I'm with you, brother.
Mr. Manley?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. The only question is, do y'all need, again, you just got the study and stuff. Do you need to internally look at it a little closer? Again, it's not gonna change anything if we don't sign the motion until next month. Is there stuff that y'all feel like you need to do? Or you feel like it's nailed down and
Yeah, we can let Anne Mary answer that, but it's not that overly detailed. It wasn't a salary study, it was just a market survey. And the analysis actually, it's pretty decent.
okay, I'm just asking in terms of.
Yeah,
you
and
know,
we apologize for, I mean, because it was,
Oh, I
the
understand.
presentation was already prepared that.
No,
and
no,
then the
I got no issue with that. I
information
just
came
want to make sure that since it's not going to change the messaging that we're saying we want to
Mhm.
do or whatever, is do y'all need the time to dot anything or not? But it doesn't sound like you do.
No.
So
One thing I did want to point out on page 3 of his report, that he said it is clear that Metcom provides an appealing array of benefits that are competitive with those of comparator organizations. We hear that all the time. We have a good benefit package, but it's just nice when an independent person tells you you actually do when we look at other organizations. So we already knew that. It's still nice to hear it from somebody else. And there is a motion in your package that provides us with direction to bring the budget back to you at the next meeting.
If you're ready to make that motion.
On the compensation for the people that don't take our health insurance, you need an opinion or consensus on that?
No, we received consensus at the last meeting.
That's what we did.
That was part of the
I didn't
employee
need to follow up
benefit
on it.
suggestions.
Yeah. Good.
And that was to provide a $1,200 stipend for those that do not take Metcom's insurance.
I have
And I think there were 19 out of 100 employees in that position, so it was not very expensive.
All right. Anything else, or we go to the motion?
Other than just to thank Commissioner Mattingly, he sends us some things every now and then that might be beneficial suggestions to the employees, and we have been doing them,
Yeah.
but we didn't want to keep him from not continuing to send. Likewise, any comments the board ever has about our operations or questions, just please send them to us so we can bring them back to the full board, or at least give you some answers.
Well, before we make the motion, again, I'd like to thank you guys for the job you do. I think you're the leaders, and you're the ones that cross the T's and dot the I's and make sure everything runs right.
You're
Thank you for
welcome.
your trust, and
Yeah.
we'll pass that on to everybody.
Yes, everybody
And
participates.
from you guys right on down to the lowest classification, that's what makes everything go good, and working with public utility, nobody likes paying a bill.
No.
You don't get very many compliments, but it is what it is. All right, so we need a motion for the operating budget.
I'll go ahead and make that motion. I move that the commission authorize staff to incorporate the proposed rate changes into the fiscal year 2026 operating budget as presented in a public hearing held on April 15, 2025, in accordance with section 113-27D of the St. Mary's County Code. I further move that the commission authorize staff to incorporate the recommended compensation changes, employee benefit suggestions into the fiscal year 2026 operating budget as discussed on April 24th, 2025. And I further move that the commission authorize staff to finalize the fiscal year 2026 capital improvement budget and fiscal year 2027 through fiscal year 2031 plan for final approval on May 20th, 2025 as discussed.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll be back in May with the final document.
All right.
Our
Moving right
meeting in
along.
May is on a Tuesday, not a Thursday.
That is correct. It coincides because it's a joint meeting with the commissioners of St. Mary's County, and their meetings are typically Tuesday. It will be on a Tuesday. Yes, sir. Thank you for pointing that out.
Is that the commissioner meeting, the 20th?
We are waiting to get confirmation, but most likely it will be the 20th.
All right, so the tentative next meeting is May 20th. Now, commission time, anybody have any comments or anything?
I'd just like to echo what you said. You all do 99% of the work to make us look good sitting up here. So just keep the ship straight and keep it righted, and well done.
All right, with that, need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Thought somebody already said something, sorry.
I thought he said second.
Meeting's